Okay, so I think we'll get underway. I'd like to call the regular meeting of Township Council for Monday, November 6th to order. And of course, I'd like to begin by acknowledging the traditional territories of the Coast Salish peoples, and in particular, acknowledge our special and valued relationships with the Kwantlen, Katzie, Matsqui, and Semiahmoo First Nations. With that, can I get a motion to adopt the agenda, please? Moved by Councillor Pratt, seconded by Councillor Ferguson. Councillor Ferguson.
Yes, thank you, Mr. Mayor. I think the clerk is going to put something up here. I hope, if they may. I had the privilege of going to Belgium this year, and this particular pin is called the Salute to the Fallen, and it's a daily act of remembrance. It happens every single day. That's 365 days a year, rain or shine, snow or sleet. And the last post, a traditional final salute to the fallen, is played by the buglers of the Last Post Association in honor of the memory of the soldiers of the former British Empire and its allies, who died as épées salient during the First World War, 1914 to 1918. It is the intention of the Last Post Association to maintain this daily act of homage in perpetuity. Every evening at exactly 8 o'clock, the police halts the traffic passing under the Menin Gate, memorial to the missing in the Belgian city of Le Perre, to allow the buglers to play their simple but moving tribute. And everyone can attend the Last Post ceremony free of charge without the need for prior reservation unless they wish to actively participate. Thank you, Mr. Mayor.
Yeah, thank you. Any other discussion on the agenda? Councillor Bailey, go ahead.
Yeah, I would like to add also that I was privileged and grew up on a street of veterans. It was a VLA project. And so I have a very different view on Remembrance Day. In my house, it is the most sacred day of the year. And I am really glad that we're going to take a moment of silence here. But I would like to really draw attention to the fact that last year we were given a pin, and it is not only a poppy, but it is in recognition of veterans and especially the Indigenous veterans. I have read a lot of history about our vets and their actions, and have come to realize that there is very little literature on the Indigenous veterans and how badly they were treated after the war, where my father was a beneficiary of very good treatment, some of the best treatment in the world of veterans. So I just ask if you can, in your remembrance, please remember all the veterans, including the Canadian Indigenous veterans, because I had no idea that we had code talkers also. I knew the Americans had them, but we had Cree code talkers and the importance that they played during the Second World War. So, yeah, thank you.
Thank you. Councillor Pratt.
Yeah, thank you, Your Worship. And obviously, echoing Councillor Bailey and Councillor Ferguson's words, it's super gratifying to see so many people still wearing poppies. You know, as a member now retired of the Armed Forces, making sure that we actually still have a physical connection to the country's past and past service is important. It's probably more important than ever that we actually remember and continue to attend the ceremonies and continue to wear the poppies, because we're losing a lot of the physical connections that we once had. So really appreciate people actually still attending and still wearing the poppies.
Yeah, appreciate those words. My grandfather served 1939 to 1945 in the Royal Air Force and managed to survive. So those stories that he told me will live on for a while yet. So with that, I'll call a question on A1. And that carries unanimously. So item B2, Councillor Bailey.
Yeah, we've got the privilege of laying a wreath again, and I think this is our last meeting before Remembrance Day. So if I could ask everyone to stand if you're able, remove your hat, and we'll have a moment of silence, please. Thank you.
Okay, item B1, Council Process Committee minutes from October 23rd. Moved by Councillor Ferguson, seconded by Councillor Bailey. Call the question on B1. Carries unanimously. Item B2, regular council meeting minutes from October 23rd. Moved by Councillor Rint, seconded by Councillor Pratt. Any discussion? Seeing none, call the question on B2. Carries unanimously. Item B3, public hearing meeting minutes from October 23rd. Moved by Councillor Rint, seconded by Councillor Bailey. Call the question on B3. That carries unanimously. I believe the delegation C1 is going to be deferred until the next council meeting. Is that correct? That's correct. So move on to delegation C2 from Sandra Cameron. Please come forward.
Good afternoon to Mayor and Councillors. My name is Sandra Cameron. I've been on the board of the Fort Langley Community Hall, which is operated, excuse me, I'm nervous, by the Fort Langley Community Improvement Society. I've been on the board since 2012. I've been the secretary, the president, the treasurer. Now I just gave up the president and I'm remaining as the treasurer. You were delivered packages of all the information that I sent to every councillor and the mayor, and in a nutshell, it's when the BIA collapsed in 2020, when they collapsed. They had 3 items that they offered to other organizations to take on, and the Cranberry Festival went to the Woodward Foundation. The banners on the poles went to the Fort Langley Community Association under Andy Schillhorn's group, and we were offered at the time the snowflakes that go up at Christmas on the lampstanders in the village. So times have changed. The BIA gave us money for 2 years to pay for the up and down, because it's roughly just under $5,000 is the cost for put them up and down and have them stored in the warehouse over in Coquitlam. So the board of the day, this board, has decided and voted that we don't feel and understand and believe that it's our job to decorate the streets of Fort Langley. It's outside the pillars of the building that we maintain and take care of, and that where our funds are supposed to be going to take care of this beautiful building and keep her in the great shape that she's in now. I call her a she because I think it's a she. So if in your notes it says that I did approach Mr. Woodward, the mayor, at the volunteer event in, I think it was back in June, to talk about the snowflakes, and we talked about them. Things went on, and eventually the only thing that I received was a phone call from a woman named Monique that works, I believe, in your office, who told us that the township was not willing to take them on because they had no place to store them. So when I asked for a letter to close off our formal offer so that we could move forward and offer them to another group, I was told that they were not prepared to send us a letter at that time. So it's remained an open situation now. So I did speak with Councillor Richter. I contacted her, and I was advised to send the package to all of you, which I did. And we are here to decide if the township wants to take the snowflakes on, store them in a township building somewhere, and have the staff of the township put them up and down off the flagpoles. And that's our offer for you, to take them for free. We have the one difference on the pages that you have here is they did find the 15th snowflake. So there are 15 and not 14. So we are hoping that the Township of Langley will take the snowflakes on. They are the only Christmas decorations on the streets of Fort Langley. And unfortunately, if the township doesn't take them on, we have to look for someone else to take them on with no guarantee they'll end up in Fort Langley. So if you have any questions, feel free to ask me anything.
Yeah, I have one question from council. Councilor Richter.
Yes, thank you very much, Ms. Cameron, for coming and speaking to us, and thank you for sending the information package around. It certainly seems very reasonable that it's outside the jurisdiction of the hall board. Were you able to talk to, say, the Fort Langley Community Association? Were they interested in it at all?
No, they have very little funds, and they get a grant from the township for taking on the banners. We would have to be using our own funds that come in for the care of the hall. Right. So I did talk about it to Andy Schillhorn, but that was not a possibility.
Okay.
No.
So the actual cost, you said it's $5,000 a year for storage and for installation. How does that break down? Is it like roughly half and half?
So for one installation a year, it's $2,754, and for storage for a year, it's $1,125. Now, this is a private company. This is their prices. I believe if it was done by Township of Langley staff, you have the trucks, you have the staff, and you have a place to store them. They're only on a 12-foot rolling rack and 4 feet wide. They're not very big. I mean, they don't take up a lot of space. So I don't know what the hourly rate is for the employees who would do it, but I also understand it's just an evening. I think they said it's about a 6-hour job to put them up. They're up for 8 weeks, and then they come down, and then they just go into storage.
Okay. And how long have they been going up in Fort Langley? And does the community like having them? Will they miss them if they're not there this year?
Oh, yes. I think there would be a hue and cry.
Yeah.
Because the only decorations in Fort Langley then would be on the front lawn of the Fort Langley Community Hall and what merchants put out in front of their businesses. I'm not too sure, but maybe Mr. Mayor could tell us how long they've been going up, because he was with the BIA, I think, when they got purchased.
It wasn't any longer. They
No.
purchased them around, I believe, 2017, 2018.
Okay.
I was no longer on the BIA at that time.
But they were going up at that point, I
believe
think.
they were up. They would have been started around that year, 2019 or something.
Right. Okay.
Yeah.
Yeah.
And you were telling me when we had our chat on the phone that part of the lighting of the Christmas tree in the fort is that Santa Claus comes in by canoe.
Yes.
And then walks down Glover Street
Mm-hmm.
to light the tree.
Right.
So it seems to me that Santa Claus probably needs to have the path lit for him.
Yes, he comes in by canoe from the North Pole, and I'll hold to that if anybody asks me. And he's met by hundreds and hundreds of people at the docks. And we have one of our local churches, Living Water, supplies big elves to help escort him up from the public docks up to the hall to light the tree for 5:30.
Oh, wow. So how many people on average do you get out?
For the Christmas tree lighting,
Yeah.
anywhere from 800 to 1,000.
Okay. And are those mainly people from Fort Langley, or are they coming from all over Langley?
A lot of them come from all over, because we bring in the Langley Children's Choir from the Langley Community Music School, and so their parents, they're coming in from everywhere with their families as well. So it's a big event, and it's been going on for years and years at the hall. So yes.
And my last question would be about what time of, what week would these lights have gone up in the past, or these snowflakes have gone up in the past?
The storage bill is paid now until November 15th, and then they have to be removed.
Okay.
Whether the township takes them on, or if they're there, we will have to remove them and find another storage place for them. But they usually go up between the 15th and the 25th of November, and they usually stay up until about the end of January.
Thank you very much for bringing this to council's attention. I appreciate your delegation today and the package of info that you sent. Thank you.
Thank you for letting us come and present this to you.
Councillor Ferguson?
Yeah, thank you, Mr. Cameron, for coming, Sandy. I did have a chance to talk to you. I guess it would be late. I'm looking at my information, late September, and you provided me, I guess, this information from DECRA Light and the information according. And I said, you know, it's always tough this late on to make decisions about, you know, getting staff and also putting budgets together and things like that. And I know I had asked you if the association would do it again for another year, and then we could decide accordingly, because time is ticking. And I know that's up to you and your group. As we reach, and I want to tell you, compliment you for the work you've done. I know you spent a lot of years with this group.
Thank you.
You also help out with the Hospital Association, the penny pinchers.
Yeah.
The mayor and I were at their gala a couple of weeks ago. Excellent. We raised lots of money for that hospital. It's important. I know you do a lot of work on that.
Thank you.
And so does council. But the point is, we're all out here for one community. And sometimes time catches up on. We've only been elected this new council year, and things happen. We've got a lot of things on our plate. There's as you know, the Christmas tea is coming up. We've got the parade in Aldergrove, my second favorite parade. I keep telling people my first parade is the one I like the most is Fort Langley, of course. And not that I don't like Aldergrove, it's a Santa Claus parade there at Christmas. So there's a lot of events happening around this time of year. And I know there's a notice of motion later on in the evening, but I wanted to thank you for your time and your group and organization. And we'll see what we can do. Thank you.
Great, seeing no other questions, I certainly appreciate you bringing it to council's attention. Oh, I have one more. Councillor Richter, go ahead.
Yeah, if council was able to make a grant out of council contingency for this year, in connection with what Councillor Ferguson has just said, would the Community Hall Association be willing to do it for one more year, provided you had the monies to be able to do it?
I'd have to take that back to the board because we vote as a team. And we did have it under the BIA, where the BIA gave us the money for the 2 years to pay for it. So if I would not want to say that we would agree to take the money, because then we'll be in the same spot again next year with the snowflakes. So I think it's time maybe that we just really decide where these beautiful, beautiful snowflakes are going to end up. And we certainly would like to see them in Fort Langley. But that, like I said, the offer is on the table. We'd like just to formalize the yay or the nay on it. And that's, I think, all we're looking for. And I think if the motion's not going to be till later today, unfortunately, I have to leave and go to Penny Pincher and work a shift this afternoon. So I won't be able to hang around. So.
Great, thanks. Seeing no other questions, certainly, again, as I said, appreciate you bringing it for council's attention. Thanks. Item C3, Adia Lewis, please come forward. Great, please go ahead.
Hey, good afternoon, Mayor and Council and community members. I was here on September 11, 2023. At that time, I was just requesting funds and mentorship collaboration for helping I'm With You House, which is a house that I operate with a few other women to continue to run. And Council, thank you very much for directing social planning to look into that for us, and nothing exists to facilitate our request. And so what I'm here today to ask for is that as a township, we maybe look at implementing something within the social planning, under the social planning umbrella, to help serve the women and children who are vulnerable and being harmed in our community, and help support them to be healthy and strong and independent and functioning, so that our community can gain the benefit of all our community members. You all, at some point, have tried to do things independently and know the difficulty of being independent, doing things on your own, basically, or even seeing a gap that exists and trying to point it out, shine a light on it, where most people just don't see it as a gap because it doesn't have an impact on them. And you also recognize the value of coming together as a team to move things forward. In my capacity as a community support person, an independent community support person, I've just seen so many women hurt and children hurt and continuing to be hurt. When you look at the statistics in Canada, we see that femicide is increasing. And every one of the women who have gone through our house, and in the last 4 years, we've had 8 families go through our home. Every single one of them have the same core story, which is a hurt male basically saying, I'll show you, and hurting them in some way, whether it's using the justice system to, put pressure on, and or physically harm or financially harm. That's been the reality. And so just providing safe space for both parties in the family to separate, be in safety, heal, and then grow in whatever direction they choose to grow, whether together or not. It's beneficial to all of us. Just a week ago in Aldergrove, we had an incident where a woman was dragged 10 blocks down the street by her partner, who's now been charged with aggravated assault. And that's not unusual. Yesterday, I met a young man who, he's in his 30s now, grew up in Aldergrove, whose dad shot and killed his mom. And when I went to look at the article today to see what it was about, it was regarding property. So it's that recurring, I'll show you kind of, I'll gain power by hurting you. And so I don't think that we can allow this to continue in our community. And while I'd love to see this be tackled on a provincial level, maybe we need to start on a civic level where we operate a pilot project of some sort, where it's seen that our community can come together to provide just safe spaces, like not using the Bible as an example as a Christian thing, but just as a story. Consider the story of the Good Samaritan, where this guy's beaten down on the road and people walk by him, people of influence walk by him, and then some guy comes up who could technically be his enemy but not, and takes him to a safe place where he can heal and then carry on with his life. We need those safe places in our community, where more of those safe places, because we know that they're wait lists and they're overflowing, and we have homes where we can integrate. What we call our program is Integrated Family Connections, and it's successful. And so if we could look into that further and develop that from a township level, start a pilot project of some sort, so that we could develop that on a township level and hopefully just light British Columbia with the hope of change and growth and healing. That is what I'm here for today.
Okay. I have a question from Council. Councilor Richter.
Yes, thank you very much for your presentation today. This Integrated Family Connections, I know when you were here the last time, you were speaking about what you offer in terms of support to families, women and children, particularly in need. But can you tell us what you would see this Integrated Family Connections looking like? Like, are we talking about living space? Are we talking about meeting space? And the other thing is, you said a pilot project. So how long would you run the pilot? And what kind of costs do you think that this would be?
I think those are things that we would have to flesh out. And that's what I'm asking for, the opportunity to do that with people who have the capacity to do that, like the resources and the know-how and whatnot. Because even when I met with social planning, because Mr. Jensen's new to social planning, there are things that he wasn't able to, like, he's still getting a handle on. So because we're all trying to get a handle on those things, if we can just work together on figuring out what it looks like. I know what it looks like now, and what I envision it looking like is families living together. And what it looks like in our home is we have our family in our family home, my daughters, who are 17 and 18, and me. We've fostered for a long time. So it's not a strange way of being for us. And there are now, at this point, 3 other moms with their children who live in our homes, all who have come from some kind of abusive situation. And what they do is, it's literally just a safe space for them to be, where our family, having gone through lots of different kinds of training, because that's essential, not just like random people volunteering to do. You have to know what you're doing and how to bring calm to the storm, how to be peace in the storms that the people with whom we interact are facing. And so they just have a safe space to be, and first a place to rest, recover, and then start a plan. We've extensively worked with Work BC, Langley Community Services, with Encompass in different ways, individually. So like my organization doesn't provide any of those resources, like our organization does not provide any of those resources. We are just the inn, basically, and a safe place to come home to, and a safe place to be, a safe ear, safe lips, like safe advice, you know? Someone who's gone through a lot of personal therapy, training work, and workshops and whatnot to do what I'm doing now, so that we can have healthy families. So far, 8. And if my goal, my vision is actually to just see this multiply in our community. Because lots of people come to Township to ask for money to do things, but like there's only so much here in this like kitty, as my grandmother would say. But with the community, like there's an infinite number of resources if we just are willing to think creatively and put effort and work into developing something strong.
Yeah. So it almost sounds like what you really need is some help right now fleshing the idea out.
Officially, and like putting a proposal together and getting things started, more than just us. Because we are already going, and I'll continue to operate. Like, I've been doing it anyway, sick and well, and that's not going to stop happening. But I just like to see that expanded from a township perspective, a community perspective, not just from the township budget, basically.
Yeah. No.
See how we can involve the community and the township. How can we partner in building our community and strengthening our community?
Okay. So part of I guess it's not really confusion, but part of what I'm trying to get clarity on is there are, under the Canadian Constitution, very clear differentiations of power between the levels of government.
Right.
And the provincial government is responsible for health and education in particular. They are also responsible for the social services program. We don't have any powers under the Canada Constitution. We have powers given to us by the province. And sometimes the province likes to delegate responsibility down to us, but they don't necessarily give us the resources to carry it out. So I'm really thinking, and I'm just thinking on the spot here right now, this is an identified need in the community. How can we make it happen without overstepping our jurisdictional responsibilities right now? Okay.
Well, one of my pet peeves, I guess I could say, is the idea that because it's never been done, it can't be done, or this is not the way we do things. And so we'd never progress in any way if we didn't change the way we did things. And so there is absolutely some kind of creative or direct way that we can achieve this, whether it is that we have to partner with the province or we start here. There's a way for it to be done. I know because I'm doing it. And so if I can do it as a single mom with children who have come from a background of trauma, who are adopted, so there's lots of, there are many levels of challenges, because they're not really difficulties, they're challenges in our home, and we thrive through them. And so if I can do that with the resources available, because I tap into what is available, then I think when we do that together, it's absolutely viable.
So it almost sounds like what we need to do is develop a proposal and take
Yes.
it to the provincial government and pitch it for funding there.
I open myself to your advice. That is what I'm here for.
Okay. Now, I'll think about that for a bit. Thank you.
Councillor Van-Popta.
Hi. When we chatted last time, one of the questions that came up was your official status as a nonprofit
As
society.
a nonprofit, yes.
I think it's usually when Township gets involved in programs, we're assisting an organization and not creating the program. And so I just wanted to check in with you and see where you're at with creating your nonprofit society.
We're incorporated, but we have to get all the administrative things up to date so that we can just apply for a registered tax status through the Canada Revenue Agency, and that's where we are right now. But we're operating already. We just have to get all the administrative things in order. But what I'm asking is not for Township to necessarily work with our organization specifically on this, because we're doing it anyway. But I think that it can be done on a wider scale and under the social planning umbrella within the Township of Langley. Even if it's not been done, we can look and see if it can be done. Our organization, our work will continue no matter what, but I have a vision for it to be more, because there is a demonstrated need for some kind of intervention, some kind of community togetherness for us to be better than we are right now.
No, and I fully agree, and I do see the need for this.
So
strongly
to answer
recommend.
that,
Yeah, I just strongly recommend you to organize. Yeah,
we're definitely working on getting ourselves together as a society to make sure that independently we function no matter what. As I said, that's going to keep happening, but I'm just looking at the bigger picture, and so that's why I'm here today.
Okay, thanks.
Councillor Pratt.
Yeah, thank you for coming back. I really appreciate you highlighting the need again for us. Can you walk us through a little bit the difference in service and the difference in resources you provide compared to, say, Ishtar Women's Resources Society? Because I know that they have a presence in the community, and I'm wondering what collaboration is possible there, or if any.
I'm meeting with them on the 15th to make that connection through social planning, and so the ED and I are getting together on the 15th for consultation on that.
Right.
And so we'll see, because that's one of the things that I said, I don't want to keep reinventing the wheel. And so it's a waste of time, energy, and resources to do that. And so I have been trying to connect with Ishtar, and now we have. And I have connected with Encompass in the past, and they've given us some advice. But all of that is wrapped up with us getting our administrative aspect together, like connecting with BC Housing and that kind of thing. So that aspect of it, we have to put together. But yeah, Ishtar and I, we have connected.
Right. Because I know that you highlight the second stage housing need, and I
Yeah.
think that's probably one of the places, to Councillor Richter's point, that our jurisdiction can play a bit of a role in at least supporting.
Right.
And then the coordination of a lot of these resources would be great to have.
And how's it different, you asked? Ishtar, I think they more operate like transition houses.
Okay.
And the difference in our home is that while it's known that it's not going to be a permanent space, it's your healing space. It's a place where you're pruning for growth. Everybody has to contribute. And so initially I started out basically trying to be like government, funding everything. And I was like, nope, this is neither empowering nor feasible. And so everyone contributes something, and that's how we operate. And that gives people a sense of ownership as well. Like right now in our home, for example, we're not the landlords, I'm not the homeowner, but we have fixed the dishwasher for moms. We have fixed the dishwasher, we have fixed the washing machine, we're in the process of fixing the dryer, we built 2 gates, like we do whatever we need to do. So there's just that, like, and all of those things arise out of what needs are in our home right now. Because I've been living without a dishwasher forever, but now we have more people in our home, and we got somebody who donated one. And we needed gates because now we have smaller kids and dogs. So it's like, we got to get gates up, and the landlord's not doing it. We went around the community, got pallets, got friends together, and built gates. So just, it's empowering. Whereas, and one of the things that we deal with as women come in, and like, I hate to say it this way, but it's just real, is it's really disempowering position to feel as if they need to look for services without building the ability to provide the resources. Like, a mama came in last night as another mama and I were working on the dryer, and she's like, when I move out and things go bad, I'm gonna call you guys. I was like, no, you're gonna learn how to fix things here, and then we'll help you as we do with each other. So it's just that a little bit more empowering, like, I think anyway. And so that's the basic difference.
Councillor Bailey?
Have you interacted with E. Fry?
No, I haven't.
You might want to go there. Elizabeth Fry has been doing a lot of work in this field for a long time, and they would be a very good resource.
Good resource too. Thank you.
Great. Yeah, thank you for that. Seeing no other questions from council, thank you for your delegation. Thanks.
Thank you so much.
Item E1, licensing bylaw policy amendment. Is there a mover? Moved by Councillor Pratt. Is there a seconder? Seconded by Councillor Rent. Councillor Richter.
Yeah, I just wanted to ask staff a question as to if we're going to recover outstanding secondary suite license fees in the same manner and by the same means as annual property tax, what exactly is this going to look like? Is it going to look like extra money on their property taxes that they're charged interest on, and they have a deadline they have to pay it by?
Your worship, it would appear as a separate entry for tax purposes, so the normal tax bill would be issued, but there would be a supplementary document that shows this amount's been added to the tax bill, such that if this amount was not paid over the course of normally paying one's taxes, it'd then be eligible for tax sale.
Oh, okay. I mean, I can understand the frustration of trying to get these fees, but I guess what I don't understand is the report basically says that we endorse the draft licensing bylaw and endorse the amendments to the policy, but we haven't had any public input on this. I'm wondering, is this a matter, and I know everybody gets tired of me asking for public input, but in this one, I think if you're gonna have a chance to have your house possessed because you haven't paid a fee, I think public should have some input on that.
And your worship, the process, because this is a regulatory bylaw in its nature, is that if it was to be endorsed, it would then come back with the bylaw for first and second reading, then first, second, and third, sorry, and then it would have to have some element of public input. Usually written would be our normal process. And at that point, then council could deliberate as to whether they wish to adopt the bylaw or revert it back for further amendment.
Did we get any public input on it up to this point at all?
Not at this time, no.
Not at this time. Okay, thank you.
Thank you. Seeing no other speakers, I'm going to move deferral to December 4th. Is there a seconder to that? Seconded by Councillor Rent. Councillor Richter? go
Why
ahead.
are we deferring to September or December 4th?
I'd like to have some more time to look into it.
Okay, thank you.
So with that, I'll call the question on deferral. That carries unanimously. Item E2, Fraser Valley Intermunicipal Business Bylaw. I'll move it. Is there a seconder? Seconded by Councillor Rent. Councillor Richter.
Oh, no, I didn't have a comment on this. I agree.
Oh, sorry. Okay. So E2, is there any speakers on E2? Seeing none, I'll call the question on E2. Carries unanimously. Item E3, capital request for waste receptacles. Is there a mover and a seconder? Moved by Councillor Pratt, seconded by Councillor Ferguson. Councillor Richter.
Yeah, I'm just wondering, for $96,840, how many receptacles are we getting? And what's the balance left in the account after we spend this?
Mr. Bracken.
Mr. Zweig.
Thank you, through your worship. With respect to the first part of the questions, these are to procure 23 receptacle based on current pricing from our supplier. With respect to the balance, I am not privy to the remaining balance. Just looking over at finance. Sandra, you have a balance?
I believe there would be about $140,000
Remaining in it. So this price of $4,000 per receptacle, is that the current market rate, or can we get it cheaper anywhere else?
Thank you, through your worship. Our supplier is willing to hold these prices till the end of this year. He's hinting at increased prices for next year.
Okay, thanks.
Seeing no other discussion, I'll call the question on E3. That carries unanimously. Item E4, Fire Hall Loan Municipal Security Issuing Resolution. I'll move it. Is there a seconder? Seconded by Councillor Bailey. Any discussion on E4? Seeing none, I'll call the question on E4. That carries. Councillor Richter opposed. Item E5, Child Care Facilities. I'll move it. Recommendation seconded by Councillor Pratt. Is there any discussion? Councillor Pratt, go ahead.
Yeah, thank you, Your Worship. I just know the amount of work that probably went into this report, so I just want to thank staff for putting it together and having it before us today.
Great. Councillor Richter?
Yes, I was wondering if we could have a discussion around the tree canopy loss in the report that's coming forward, particularly tree loss in locations placed in current passive park areas.
So you want to make an amendment to add an indication of tree canopy removal within the ranking?
Yeah, because the whole point of passive park is for people to enjoy trees, and if we're going to start building buildings, and I don't disagree with the need for childcare buildings, but how many trees are we going to lose as a result of that?
So I'll second that. I see no harm. We can dispose of that right now. I see no harm in adding that information. Is there any discussion on that? Seeing none, I'll call the question on the amendment to E5. That carries unanimously. Back to the main motion. You have anything else, Councillor Victor?
No, thank you.
Councillor Ferguson?
Yeah, thank you, Mr. Mayor. I want to ask a quick question through the chair to staff. Again, it was, as Councillor Pratt said, it's a very good report, and it's something that took a little bit of time. I was just wondering the term feasibility. Can you comment on that, what that means, and how you're going to implement it, if I may?
Mr. Bracken?
Your worship, at a base level, it would include verifying ownership, say, for example, making sure that it's township property as opposed to school district property. Going further in terms of looking at some of the improvements, what the implications would be. As well, we'd also consider then the impact on some of the elements that have been suggested, drainage, tree canopies, those sorts of things. And finally, I think we'd want to have a look at the condition upon which, or conditions upon which, the township may have acquired the property. Sometimes we've obtained property through donations, and sometimes there's some restrictions or caveats as to those things as to future use. So we'd have to make sure that we are in an area that has the appropriate title and fee simple interest that we could proceed with.
Thank you.
Thank you. Yeah, so I certainly appreciate it getting to this stage. The notice of motion from the summer in regards to the New Spaces Fund from the province. I noted from the report that the number of child care spaces within our community has gone down by hundreds, and certainly need to take some action on it, regardless of the so-called child care action plan that currently exists. This fund is new, relatively new, so I think it's appropriate for the township to really have a close look at how we're going to partner with the province to provide much needed child care within our community and all the benefits that come from that. So I'm looking forward to moving this along. So call the question on E5. Carries unanimously. E6, Development Variance Permit Application Number 100161. Is there a moved by Councillor Pratt, seconded by Councillor Bailey. Is there any discussion on E6? Seeing none, I'll call the question on E6. Great. So that carries unanimously. Item F1, bylaws for first and second reading, official community plan amendment, rezoning application number 100247, bylaw number 59515952. Is there a mover? Moved by Councillor Rint, seconded by Councillor Ferguson. Councillor Pratt.
Yeah, thank you, Your Worship. And just through yourself to staff, a question on this application, seeing as it's been within the 200 Street 2040 area. Were there any discussions with the proponents on potentially reducing the amount of parking of their own volition?
Mr. Richardson.
Thank you, through your worship, Councillor Pratt, staff. Since Council's resolution about 2040 do advise proponents of that, and that would have been communicated to the proponent. The proponent is elected to proceed in a bylaw compliant manner, Your Worship.
Yeah, thank you.
Seeing no other discussion, I'll call the question on F1. And that carries unanimously. F2, rezoning application number 100748, bylaw number 59485949. Moved by Councillor Rint, seconded by Councillor Bailey. Is there any discussion on F2? Councillor Richter.
Yeah, I was wondering if staff could identify exactly how this application differs from the previous application that was passed under the previous council but was turned down at fourth reading by this council.
Mr.
So what are
Bacon?
the key differences?
Mr. Bacon.
Thank you, Your Worship. The key differences are, Your Worship, that the previous application was advanced as a rental project with 30% designated as affordable. The difference here is that that component has now been removed, but the building itself remains the same, Your Worship. Sorry, one additional point. The previous application also included a parking variance. The parking variance has now been eliminated.
And the height of the building is the same?
Through Your Worship, that's correct.
Okay, thank you.
Thank you. Councillor Pratt.
Yeah, thank you, Your Worship. I'll wait to see if there's any other comments, but I'll have a
go ahead.
deferral. So I think that this is a potentially very important site just in the development of Willowbrook. The Willowbrook plan is old. We're undergoing a planning process for it over the next couple of years, and I think that with such close proximity to eventual SkyTrain and rapid transit, it would be a missed opportunity on this site. So I would move, I believe it would be a deferral or a referral, I'm not sure, to move this application to defer it until the Willowbrook Community Plan update is complete.
Mr. Bacon, I believe that would be in order as a deferral, given that is in the long-term work plan to update the Willowbrook Community Plan.
That's correct.
That would potentially delay it for up to 5 years.
That would be subject
3
to
to
the work
5. I
plans.
believe our agreement with TransLink contemplates it has to be completed by 2028. Is that correct? That's correct. Yeah, so it could be a delay of a number of years.
Yep.
Yep. Okay. So with that, is there a seconder to that deferral? Great. That's seconded by Councillor Richter. Do you have anything else on that, Councillor Pratt?
No, I think I just believe that we have a parking lot right now in an area that's going to be within walking distance of $1 billion, multiple billion dollar public transportation investment, and I think it would be a missed opportunity to not try and realize as much possible housing on this site as possible. And I think a 6-story mixed-use building is great, but I just think that we talk about siting, form and character all the time, and I think for this site, the form and character of what we would want in that area is, in my opinion, my estimation, bigger than this.
Great. Councillor Ferguson?
Yeah, and just, Mr. Mayor, thank you. Either yourself or staff, I mean, if we were indeed to do this amendment or deferral, deferral, would that indeed be limited to a number of years, or would it be something that could be answered quicker than later based, I guess, be an awful lot of zoning or rezoning that required, if I may, through the chair?
It could theoretically happen sooner. I think what the reference was that this be deferred until the Willowbrook plan has been updated, and I think the realistic time frame that was given is likely because of the work program later as opposed to sooner. So I think that's the reference to 2028, which is the ultimate deadline. So it could occur sooner, but in all likelihood, given the workloads, it probably wouldn't be much before that.
And the other challenge, Councillor Ferguson, is our work plan for community policing and planning is now completely blown by the province, requiring us to allow fourplexes everywhere. So and some of the requirements and timelines are going to fully consume our staff for a number of months, perhaps up to a year.
So I guess my question was.
They're not even going to get to the stuff that we want them to get to.
My question was to you and the staff.
Yeah.
What do you think is the best step forward, if I may, knowing that what is happening with the province right now?
Mr. Bagan, do you have any comment? I think you've answered the question. The deferral's on the floor. It's in order. It would be an unknown timeline to when it would be met, but it has to be met contractually by 2028. And I believe the timeline was to meet it by 2026. Currently, with that work plan now having to be revised. If the province proceeds with requiring us to permit mini apartment buildings on every single family lot. So that, the deferral, seeing no other speakers, I'll call the question on the deferral of F2. And that is defeated. Councillor Bailey, Councillor Rent, Mayor Woodward, Councillor Van Popta, and Councillor Ferguson opposed. Now back to the main motion. Does anybody else have anything else on F2, first and second reading? Seeing none, I'll call the question on F2. That carries unanimously. G1, bylaws for first, second, and third reading. Council Advisory Committee Establishment Bylaw, bylaw number 5943. That is moved by Councillor Rent, seconded by Councillor Pratt. Councillor Pratt, go ahead.
Yeah, thank you, Your Worship. I have an amendment. I believe Ms. Little and Ms. have the amendment. It's a very simple one. It would add a clause to section 5.1, which is listing the members of the committee, and it would add a new clause that says up to one representative from the Langley Farmers Institute.
Is there a seconder to that? Seconded by Councillor Rent. Any other discussion on that, Councillor Pratt?
Nope.
Nope. Seeing no other discussion on that, I'll call the question on the amendment. That carries unanimously. So back to G1 as amended. Anything else, Councillor Pratt? Nope. Any other discussion on G1 as amended? Seeing none, I will call the question on G1 as amended. Carries unanimously. H1, bylaws for third reading. Rezoning application number 100645, bylaw number 5903. Moved by Councillor Rent, seconded by Councillor Ferguson. Councillor Pratt, go ahead.
Yeah, thank you, Your Worship. And I know we all heard at the same public hearing a lot of the community feedback on the desire to not see the east side of that avenue opened to vehicle traffic and the importance of keeping it closed just to pedestrians and cyclists. And I do wonder, you know, even if this building does get built in the next couple of years, the volume of traffic, will it actually justify the opening of I believe it's 28A Avenue all the way through? So I would ask through yourself to staff, the language specifically, but the mechanism to potentially undertake a further review of the interim and ultimate condition to confirm that the east connection to 273 is A, not warranted at this time, what point the construction might actually have to occur, and if it does actually require the opening of 28A Avenue in the ultimate condition.
Let me come back to you. I think it's probably going to go on for a while. I'll go to one other speaker and then I'll come back to you on this issue. Councillor Richter?
Yeah, I'm just wondering if we could do something very simple and straightforward, which is basically keep 28A Avenue closed at the present time.
Let's inquire about that. Mr. Richardson, do you have any thoughts on that? It is a rather substandard road for an apartment building, so is there some middle ground here potentially?
Thank you, Worship. So as noted, the subject application is for 43 apartment units. The development at the 273rd Street and the townhouses provided cash in lieu for the construction of that connection. In the ultimate, the subject area is designated low-density apartment with probably have like 200 apartments in that area. Having said that, there could be an incremental approach that's been outlined by council to achieve that, doing a traffic study and seeing if it's warranted to open the connection at this time. But with that in mind, we'd probably also want to identify, as you've noted, given the current condition of the road, if any other improvements are required, say in the interim, Your Worship.
So if Councillor Pratt may have an amendment, Councillor Richter, unless you would like to try to find a middle ground there somewhere.
Well, I mean, I can see improving the road up to the apartment building, which is mid-block, but from the apartment building east, it's single-family housing with a footpath. Like, why do we have to touch that now?
Yeah, I believe that there was some concern about the necessary traffic capacity, but I think Mr. Richardson indicated that could potentially be addressed with a traffic impact study showing that the interim would be successful. Mr. Richardson, did I characterize that correctly?
Thank you, Richard. That's correct. I just took the opportunity to share sort of the current condition at that connection there. I had the opportunity to see visit the site yesterday morning. With that, we'd probably want to look at some improvements in terms of maybe a turnaround for maintenance and emergency vehicles, Your Worship.
So I believe there would be some ways to satisfy the resident objective to leave the street in a dead-end state for as long as possible, based upon accommodating future growth when that growth occurs. I mean, there's no need to open the road for the sake of opening the road. You could open the road when it's required, but if there's a desire to mandate that the road not be opened, then of course that would be in order to consider. I can go back to Councillor Pratt. Councillor Pratt, go ahead.
Yeah, I believe it'd probably be a development prerequisite, Your Honor, through yourself to staff.
I'm not a justice of the Supreme Court, but...
Did I just say Your Honor?
You did. Your Worship is just fine. Go ahead.
Councillor Ferguson always talks about decorum, so I was just trying to be respectful.
I am not qualified for that position.
Through yourself to staff then, would look for some guidance on the wording and the placement of the amendment, but it would, the intent would be that we would undergo a interim traffic study to justify the long-term opening of 28A Avenue all the way to 273, and what the ultimate condition of the road would have to look like once the street is actually fully developed. Since we heard from several property owners on that street that they have no intention anytime soon of actually going forward with development east of this apartment site, which would really actually necessitate the opening of 28A Avenue.
Mr. Richardson, is there a middle ground here where potentially the third reading can be granted, but maybe there's an interim step where all efforts are maintained to leave the road in an open condition with potentially some improvements along the lines you mentioned? Maybe you could help us with some language.
Thank you, Your Worship. I was jotting down some ideas here, speaking, and the thought from Councillor Pratt with respect to a development prerequisite. Some of the effective maybe provision of a traffic study identifying and securing any needed improvements to maintain the existing non-vehicular pedestrian-only connection at 29A Avenue and 273 Street, Your Worship.
Do you wish to move that?
So moved.
Is there a seconder to that? Seconded by Councillor Richter.
And I do just want to confirm that was 28A Avenue?
Richardson?
That's correct, Your Worship. Sorry, I'm speaking too quickly.
No, that's all good. Thank you.
So I think we have that. Councillor Richter, you wish to push your button again if you wish to speak to this? Yep, go ahead.
Did we get the language down? Because it sounded like it was right.
Yeah.
I wonder if we could hear it again.
Mr. Richardson, maybe give us another read of that.
Thank you, Your Worship. Provision of a traffic study identifying and securing any needed improvements to maintain the existing non-vehicular pedestrian-only connection at 28A Avenue and 273 Street, Your Worship.
So if I interpret that correctly, it maintains the intent to not open the road at this time, but do what's required to leave it unopened. Is that correct?
Correct, Your Worship.
Yeah.
Okay, but who's paying for this study? Is it the developer or is it
My
township?
assumption is be the proponent, absolutely, but Mr. Richardson can confirm.
Your Worship, if this is that as a development prerequisite, that would be the responsibility of the proponent, Your Worship.
That's correct.
Okay, thank you.
Okay. Seeing no other discussion, I'll call the question on that amendment. That carries unanimously. Back to H1 as amended. Is there any other discussion? Councillor Richter.
Sorry, I just want to make sure we're still on G1, aren't we?
So we're on H1 as
H1.
H1 as amended now.
Okay.
Yeah. So call the question on H1 as amended. That carries unanimously. I1, bylaws for final adoption, public spaces regulation bylaw amendment. I'll move it. Is there a seconder? Seconded by Councillor Rint. Is there any discussion on I1? Seeing none, I'll call the question on I1. That carries unanimously. I2, official community plan amendment, rezoning application number 100251, bylaw number 5936, 5937 for development, this is for a licensed retail store on 56th Avenue in Gloucester. Is there moved by Councillor Bailey, seconded by Councillor Pratt. Is there any discussion on this? Seeing none, I'll call the question on I2. That carries unanimously. J1 is an item deferred from October 23rd. I will move it. Is there a, sorry, going to remind me again, deferral does not require a mover and a seconder. Do I almost have that memorized correctly?
That is correct.
That's
For the
correct.
deferral, you have moved it, and Councillor
Arinda
Brent
has
has
seconded it, so
Now
it-
the debate can continue.
Right, it's back on the floor as deferred. Is there any discussion on J1? Councillor Pratt.
I know that there were the concerns just in regards to the traffic flow,
Mhm.
the road network there. I believe a subsequent motion this evening will hopefully address those concerns.
That's correct. So I have a motion that is separate from the development approval itself. If it was to be granted third reading, I have a subsequent motion regarding the concern from the resident. That's correct. So I'll speak to the concern around traffic flow in this area with a subsequent motion. So I'm going to call the question on J1. That carries unanimously. Maybe you can bring up that motion. Did I send you that one, Ms. Little? They did not. It's quite simple. So I'll read this here. This is a subsequent motion related to J1, but will be running separately. That council directs staff to report to council on the potential completion of 204th Street from 73A Avenue to 72nd Street. I'll move that. Seconded by Councillor Pratt. So this is the goal here is I did review the overall intended long-term traffic pattern for the area. And at the moment, there is some interim development dependent upon 72B. But over the long run, that will be spread around by 3 other access points. And I think it would be appropriate to look at completing 204th from 73A to 72 Street based on the fact that the Smith neighborhood plan is not likely to proceed on its western side of 208th Street anytime soon. So this will come forward as a separate project to potentially look at opening up traffic in that area. So with that, I'll call the question on that subsequent motion. That carries unanimously. Mayor and council report. I do not have a report. Is there anyone else who wishes to report anything? Seeing nothing, is there a Metro Vancouver Regional Committee report? Seeing none, move on to item M1. I wanted to highlight this for the council and the public. This was confirmed in special closed 2 weeks ago that the fibromyalgia location in Aldergrove, we have worked with them in a very positive way. They do have and have secured a new location within Aldergrove, and they'll be provided with some rent forgiveness on their existing lease to help cover their moving costs. So they'll be provided free rent as of October 1st. Their October payment will be refunded. Their deposit will be returned, and they'll be expected to be relocated sometime by February. So we've given them until the end of March. So that was successfully and positively resolved. Is there any other items under for information that council wishes to discuss? Councillor Bailey.
Yeah, number 5. I think it's really important, since we don't do proclamations, and that is what the provincial government is asking here. This is probably the only chance I've got to say that once a year you'll see, I know Councillor Pratt and myself are supporting hair on our face. And it has to do with this month is also Movember, which is very important. It is the leading cancer for men, prostate cancer, and it's very important to everyone very close to me as being a survivor. So just bringing attention that November is also Prostate Cancer Month.
Yeah, great. Councillor Ferguson.
Yes, if I may, through a chair, I noticed that on N2, the Salish and Place have received some sort of a grant of some sort. Does that mean to say it was something applied before or something that we just put in just lately, if I may, through a chair?
Mr. Bracken, I believe that application was approved by council relatively recently.
It was certainly this term, Your Worship,
Yeah.
and it's in reference to audiovisual equipment.
So now the next question, have you got a date for prospective opening, if I may?
Not at this time. There's been some complications with the deficiency list we have to continue to work our way through.
Okay, thank you. We're all waiting.
Yes, we are. Councillor Richter?
Yeah, I just wanted to say that I'm really looking forward to the Martini Town Christmas Holiday Light Festival. It sounds like it's going to be a wonderful new addition to the Christmas festivities in the community, and I know that my children often play that disc golf, and so they've been watching with a great deal of interest what's going on right there, down there right now. So I'm pretty sure they're going to go check it out, but I hope other families in Langley will too. It's really amazing what the stage that's been set there, developed there by Gemma Martini.
Great, thanks. Seeing no other items under for information, move to item 01, which is a motion from the Council Process Committee as amended. Does anybody wish to move that? Moved by Councillor Pratt, seconded by Councillor Rent. Councillor Bailey, go ahead.
Yeah, knowing very little about airports and that, when I saw this coming up, I was lucky enough to be able to attend a meeting the other night where the 70 or 80 people that were there struck a committee, the AAC, the airport, oh God. There we are, Airport Advisory Committee. I'll tell you, it was a real eye-opener. And thank you very much, people at the airport, for giving me a lot of information I didn't have before. And so number 5 here, that the tenants be consulted as matters progress. I think it's critical. This is something that I was totally ignorant of, how the airport operates, and I really want to make sure that as this goes forward, that the people that are users of the airport are heard loud and clear.
Councillor Pratt?
Yeah, thank you, Your Worship. And like Councillor Bailey, when I first started researching and learning about the airport, I grew up near it. It's a fantastic asset, and I think it can be around for a long time. And once we're done with the discussion, I have a list of amendments here that I'd be putting forward to the motion that we have on the table.
Okay, I'll come back to you. Councillor Richter?
Yes, and I'm not sure which point this fits under, but I'd like to put an amendment forward to drop the rotary-only model from the discussion. I think the current airport functions very well with both types of air vehicles there, and I think it would be a shame if we did lose.
I don't see that in the motion, Councillor Richter.
No, but that was in the discussion that we had in the Council Priorities
Yeah,
Committee,
it's
and
in
it
a-
was in the report that came to the Council Priorities,
So it was in-
looking into the economic feasibility of a rotary-only model.
It's not in the motion, Councillor Richter. So if a consultant put that in a report, that report was not requested by council. And that snippet about a heliport or a heli operation was not requested or directed by council. So you'd be
Okay.
amending something that no one's directed.
I just want to make sure, that's all, but if I could direct a question through to Mr. Backen. Is the intent of staff to come back in response to this motion with a discussion around rotary-only model?
Premature to tell you staff's intent, but highly unlikely that would be the suggestion. At this point, it would be, as stated in the motion, the reference as to potential update to the model with a review of the ideal long-term tenant mix with the greatest economic return.
Okay, so rotary, your understanding of this is it's not rotary only?
That's my understanding. Yes.
Okay, thank you very much.
Councillor Ferguson?
No, that was it already.
Yeah, thank you. Councillor Pratt?
Yeah, thank you, Your Worship, and hopefully we can bring the amendments up. So there's 3 here. 2 of them are changes to clauses that are already in the motion. The 3rd is a new clause at the end of the motion itself. So change to clause 2, a review and potential update to the land leasing model with a review of the ideal long-term tenant mix with the greatest economic return, with the new addition for the township with a focus on industrial and commercial users.
Okay, let's take them one by one and we can dispose of them that way. So if you wish to move their amendment to item 2, is there a seconder to that? Seconded by Councillor Bailey. Is there any discussion just on item 2 as amended?
Yep, I'd like to.
Yep, go ahead, Councillor Pratt.
So the reason why I've included this amendment here is first and foremost because the reality of the airport is that it was designed, it was started, it was created, and it's been since its inception airport for the recreational users, and I think it needs to stay that way. And I believe that a comprehensive review of the airport needs to take place. They need to be consulted, they need to be included. But the intention of this motion was not and is not to contemplate any type of removal of recreational users or a significant impact to their status at the airport. So that's why I've made sure that this is a focus on the industrial and commercial users that have a lot of the space that is utilized and underutilized at the airport. So that's why this amendment is included.
Great. So on the amendment, Councillor Richter.
Well, if it's not intended to keep recreational users out, why wouldn't you say with a focus on recreational, industrial, and commercial users?
Because I don't think that the status of their leases needs to change.
Okay, so the intent of this is that the only properties we're looking at changing are the current industrial and commercial users.
I don't even think the word changing is necessary. I think it's specifically just reviewing their status at the airport.
It does say potential update.
Okay, thank you.
Councillor Ferguson?
I think it's important to note that, the airport is an important functioning part of our community, and it's been there a number of years. We've done the best we can to upkeep it. We've got a number of improvements with a new tower and other things. I think that we have a long-standing relationship with the users, many of which are private citizens or friends of friends that enjoy recreational flying. And also there's teaching that goes on as well there. So this would be, I guess, a focus on industrial and commercial users, but we can't lose sight of the fact that the recreational users are there and have been there a while. Thank you.
Yeah, agreed. So I'll call the question on the First Amendment. And that carries with Councillor Richter opposed. Councillor Pratt, go ahead.
Thank you. So the Second Amendment would be in clause number 4. Other items, and then the changes, including but not limited to institutional uses, and then continue on. That motion or that clause was left originally vague, and in discussion with staff and myself, thought it would be appropriate that we highlight the fact that there are some fantastic institutional uses at the airport that I think have a place.
So you've got the amendment. Is there a seconder to the amendment? Seconded by Councillor Bailey. So now keep going. Go ahead. Yeah,
Yep.
It's on the floor.
No, that's good for me.
I didn't mean to cut you off. I just want to get it on the floor first. Make
fair
sure
enough.
it's seconded. Do you have any more to speak to it?
Nope.
Nope. Seeing no other discussion, Councillor Richter on the Second Amendment.
Yeah, so what exactly does it mean?
Mr. Bracken, maybe you could, how would staff interpret that amendment?
Your worship, again, the original motion referenced other items that may be appropriate for council to consider. This would put the focus on other items or uses being institutional uses, not exclusively, but look at those as being uses we could build off, provided, of course, they met the criteria for aeronautical uses.
Okay, but what would qualify as an institutional use?
Mr. Bracken, I think we can just, we're obviously getting to a museum and other items similar to institutional use. Is that correct?
That's one example, yes.
Yes.
Okay, what would other examples be?
Other examples of institutional uses could be any federal potential use that might exist, because that's something that would be considered an institutional use.
So like RCMP?
Or post office, or something of that nature. Military.
Interesting. Okay, thank you.
I'm sorry, Mr. Bracken, maybe you want to lean into your microphone a bit more, but does that answer your question, Councillor Richter?
Yeah.
Okay. So call the question on the Second Amendment. That carries with Councillor Richter opposed. Back to Councillor Pratt. You wanted to add item 6, is that correct?
Correct. Yeah, item 6, adding a review.
You're going to move that?
Yeah, that's right.
Is there
Yep,
a
I'll move it.
seconder to that? Seconded by Councillor Bailey. Go ahead.
So the review of various governance models of regional airports in British Columbia and best management practices across the industry. I think if we're undertaking a review of the airport to this magnitude, it'd be worthwhile to also undertake a review of how other jurisdictions with airports manage, operate, and run them.
Okay. Councillor Bailey?
Yeah, listening to the people the other night, this sounds like it is a critical point of any kind of review to see if this airport is functioning like most other regional airports are, and to compare them across the industry.
Great. Seeing no other discussion, I'll call the question on the third amendment. That carries unanimously. Back to the main motion as amended. Is there any other discussion? Councillor Ferguson.
Thank you, Mr. Mayor. Now we're at the point we're going to be voting on the main motion. We've got an awful lot. We've gone through a number of steps, and I think the steps have been worthy. We've had comments from the public. They've had an information meeting. Now I'm going to ask the question I always ask. Now, looking at the cost and budget of a number of the steps that we both added and exist in the motion, has staff got an idea of what the budget would be this, or the business plan, if I may?
Your worship, we'd have to come back to you with that. This has been a bit of a work in progress, so we can certainly estimate that, but it would take a bit of time.
Okay, so I mean, would be just something that would come up in this year's budget, or would be kind of a working draft or something, if I may?
Our goal would be to use existing funds if they're available, and if not, we would have to deal with that at the budget process for 2024.
Okay, thank you very much.
Councillor Pratt.
Yeah, thank you, Your Worship. And I think it is important to realize that the therefore be it resolved paragraph leading into the motion itself will direct staff to report to council on a potential timeline, process, and funding mechanisms. So all of the clauses that are amended and included in this today don't actually result in any actions being taken at this point in time, especially seeing as we have the consultation clause added and included. So anything that is voted on today is just directing us to get more information on the cost, timeline, and process from staff. So we still have a long way to go.
Yeah. So this one, now we actually have this motion back from committee and amended to make some tweaks. We've had multiple discussions on it. It's been an interesting one for me. Explaining that I got my pilot's license at this airport wasn't in high school. I got a nasty email about that. I'm not sure why that generated a nasty email, but it did. And you know, I think the airport itself doesn't have a funding source separate from property taxes and rents and fuel and a few other minor things. And so I think the intent was to have a review of that and learn more about it and see what options are. And what role the airport plays in our community where it's located, the history that it has, and part of the identity that it creates for Langley, but also realistically, you know, what role does it play and what impacts does it have? It never really occurred to me by simply saying, what do you think? People would assume that I wanted to close it. It honestly just didn't occur to me at all that would be the conclusion. So what I took away from this was that it's a good thing to have a look at the airport. I think on council we wanted to do that. The improvements that are causing some of the concern that have now doubled in cost were left and were not funded and completed by the previous council when they would have been half the cost. Now we're facing that situation on a number of projects that were deferred. It's not unique to the airport. The core takeaway for me was that as a councillor engaging with the public, it's different than being the mayor. And I obviously need to watch what I say a little more carefully in some of these Facebook posts. I personally don't like that people took away that somehow there was a preconceived notion to close the airport, which nobody had ever even discussed. So for that, it certainly wasn't my intent, and so I'll certainly be more careful in the future than maybe I was as a councillor. And certainly looking forward to getting some of this information, learning more about the airport's operations, and finding a way to keep it exactly where it is, with the funding sources that keep it running and operating as a successful facility within our community. And that's really the only thing I think we're looking to do and achieve. And it's really that simple. And so beyond that, it's a misunderstanding. It's not true. It's people may be concerned that this is the direction it's going without asking, which is all fine and it's all good, and we'll fix it over time. But I certainly want to make sure that everybody's aware that with the investments that have been made there with a relatively new runway and with one other runway that needs to be replaced. The idea that it would be converted to heliport operations only, no one's discussed that. If a consultant puts it in a report, that's all it is. So with that, I want to call the question on it, and I think over time the conversation will continue, and we'll continue to get this information. And I think what we're going to have is a lot more awareness and understanding of the airport by mayor and council in the couple of years ahead, which I think is valuable, positive, and useful. So with that, I call the question on 01 as amended. That carries unanimously. P1, Councillor Richter.
Yes, I'd like to move the motion. I'd like to make a couple of corrections in the whereases. In number 1, just change it from 14 to 15. And in number 2, in the second line, divest itself, the word of needs to be added in there.
Could you repeat the second one, Councillor Richter?
The second one, the second line, it says divest itself the Langley snowflakes. There should be an of in there.
Yeah, okay.
Yeah. I will move that motion.
Is there a seconder to that? Is there a second? It is seconded by Councillor Pratt. Very well. Councillor Richter, go ahead.
Yeah, I think that this is clearly something that's an expected tradition, or new tradition anyway, in Fort Langley. I think that this is a very generous offer that has been made to the township, and I think we can afford to do it this year using council contingency monies. Staff may want to revisit it in future years, but I think we should take it on for this year.
Okay.
At least.
Did you have more? Sorry, go ahead.
It stands as I've presented, except for the 2 corrections in the whereases.
Okay. Councillor Pratt?
Yeah, thank you, Your Worship. I'm playing catch up a little bit on this one. How long ago did we receive information that the society wasn't intending or wasn't able to complete the setup and takedown of these lights this year, through yourself to staff?
Do we know that, Mr. Becker?
Just going by recollection, so it's always difficult. I think the first inclination was probably September, October.
So it's about, okay, a couple months ahead of time. And I guess the question that we always ask, and it begs asking again, is will we actually have staff capacity and time on a short notice to complete the setup and takedown?
It's always difficult because of the time of year and depends upon the weather conditions, for example, in terms of what our crews are dedicated to. If the direction, though, is to use best efforts to proceed, we can do so, and that may involve the use of a contractor. Again, it depends really on the timing and the cost.
Right. Okay. Thank you.
Okay, thank you. Councillor Bailey?
Yeah, I've got an amendment to this motion.
Okay, I'll come back to you. Actually, go ahead. There's one other speaker but spoken already. What's your amendment?
Okay, I'd like to, in the resolution at the end of Fort Langley snowflakes, delete the rest of it, starting with in return for taking over.
Is there a seconder to that? Repeat the motion, Councillor Bailey. What's your amendment?
In the therefore be it resolved, strike everything after Fort Langley snowflakes, starting with in return for.
Yeah, so just accepting them and leaving the decision separately.
Yes.
To do with them separately. Is there a seconder to that? Seconded by Councillor Ferguson. On the amendment, Councillor Bailey, go ahead.
I like the idea of someone taking over the responsibility if this organization is going to drop them. I'm going to sound partially like a real Scrooge here. For 13 years, I have participated in the leading discussion group housed by Traffic Injury Research Foundation about distractions on the road. I don't like any of these things. I see them popping up everywhere. I have fought against these things as they are very distracting to drivers on the road. So, not being a Scrooge, I'd like to take these snowflakes and possibly offer them to any other organization that would step forward. Christmas in Williams Park is one that would come to mind. to be able to add to their display, or anyone else that might make these an addition to the Christmas in Township of Langley without possibly being a distraction to drivers on the road, and especially in a confined space like Fort Langley, where there are still trucks driving down the main drive. And it terrifies me when I walk, when I'm down there and see the trucks going through this tight space and just adding more distractions to a possible disaster, in my opinion.
Okay. Councillor Richter on the amendment.
Yeah, I'd like Mr. Backen's legal advice on this. An offer was made to the township. It was sent to the to Mayor Eric Woodward on Friday, May the 26th of 2023. It was an offer. We'll give you this if you do this. By cutting out the end of the paragraph, does it negate the offer? Does it destroy the offer?
Mr. Backen?
Your worship, essentially, we would not be accepting the offer. We'd be putting a counter proposal. So the process could proceed if they agree, if they were to maintain that the offer was for the snowflakes plus their installation, then that would be something that would negate our offer, if you will. So it's really a step-by-step process. Right now, we're saying we'll accept them. That could be the end of the story. If they disagree, then it would remain theirs, their snowflakes, until they made another suggestion that council could consider.
So what we're doing is we're counter-offering to them by doing this.
Effectively, that's correct. It's a counter offer. They made an offer that included installation, and we're accepting, but not acceding to or agreeing to installation.
Okay. Well, I don't think it's fair to the community hall. I think they were quite clear that they see it as beyond their jurisdiction, but I'm not going to support this amendment.
Councillor Ferguson?
Okay, so there's always confusion in groups, and I think they do their best to explain things. I did explain to the delegation today that I had talked to her, all done orally, and then some information was given to me about storage. And now we're looking at a motion, and perhaps it was in some information that I don't have in front of me, or for one reason I'm not immortal. I don't remember everything, but I remember discussion that I was told by the delegation in September that they wanted to give the snowflakes to the Township of Langley. I don't remember anything about there have to be some legal requirement for us to put them up. I told them, and the delegation agreed to me today, that we did not have time this year or the resources to put them up. That was what and I continued, I even said that to her by text message. So this, in I guess, notice of motion, is perhaps different than what my recollection now. Whether we're going back and forth, I don't know. I would hope we're not. We will accept their snowflakes. That's what the motion, and if it passes, we will accept their snowflakes. And we can't put them up there, so maybe somebody else can put them up or come to us. But right now, that's what the motion said, and I can support that. But I always told them there's no way we'd be able to put them up this year, or at least the township staff. And that's my position, Mr. Mayor.
Okay, thank you. Councillor Pratt?
Yeah, thank you, Your Worship. I'm wondering, because the delegate mentioned that they usually go up November 15th, I think is the date that they suggested. If the worry is that it's too tight of a timeline to get staff to do it ourselves, what's stopping us from pushing the opening date? Is it do they want it in time for the canoe arrival of Santa Claus? Is that what this is about?
Mr. Backen, I mean, do we know this information?
No, we don't appear to have that information, Your Worship.
Be conjecture, I would say.
Okay.
Okay. Councillor Bailey?
Yeah, we're speaking to the amendment.
We're speaking to the amendment, that's correct.
And to me, it's got nothing to do with timelines and this amendment. This amendment has to do with we'll accept the snowflakes. We'll see if someone else in the community would like them. and pass it right through. But I do not like these things being a distraction in such a tight corridor where there's all kinds of people walking. The crosswalks are always a bit of a surprise with people are coming and going, and especially when you have heavy traffic going through there.
Okay. Councillor Richter?
Okay, I'm going to go back. I kept my envelope, brought it with me. This was delivered to me on October 18th. It says, enclosed, please find the following documents. A letter addressed to Mayor Woodward, May 26, 2023, a memorandum of agreement between the FLCIS and the BIA Fort Langley, an invoice for Dectralite for storage and installation, and the mandate of the FLCIS. The Fort Langley Community Improvement Society, the society that operates the hall, offered these 14 snowflakes to the township for free to be installed only in Fort Langley. We have not received any formal notice from the township that they would be willing to take them on to decorate Fort Langley or to refuse the offer. So the offer is take them, but use them to decorate Fort Langley. What we're doing is we're saying, oh yeah, we'll take them. And that's it. Doesn't say we're going to put them up in Fort Langley, which is basically what they want us to do.
Seeing no other discussion, I call the question on the amendment to, what are we on here? P1. The amendment carries with Councillor Richter and Councillor Pratt opposed. Now back to the main motion as amended. Councillor Bailey, did you have anything else? You go ahead, your microphone's on.
Yeah, I think these snowflakes are, especially when I see the initial valuing, are something that would be a benefit to Christmas in the township. And that's why I say we should make an offer, give them to someone else who would be able to use them in the proper setting. And the proper setting to me is I deliberately say Christmas in Williams Park because I think it would be, with 15 of these snowflakes, it would really add to their display. Or if someone else does it, but not on a roadway. These things are incredibly, they have always bothered me since they started showing up, not just these ones, all over the place, and I think they are a potential danger.
Okay. Councillor Ferguson?
Yeah, I know it's not in the motion, but I still would have to think that an organization in Fort Langley might be an organization in the community that could put them up. And I do remember a delegation and speaking that they would like them to stay in Fort Langley. Maybe they might not go up this year, but they may indeed. But I remember Fort Langley, but it's not in the motion. It's a community's offer. Okay, thank you.
Thank you. Councillor Van Popta?
Through your worship to staff, is there any reason that if these went to the FLCA, the Community Association, which is in charge of putting up the banners, that they couldn't apply for an additional grant to put these up as well?
I believe they also receive a $2,500 grant.
Yeah, no, that's what I'm saying, but can they do it for this purpose as well?
I don't know. Mr. Bracken, any thoughts?
Your worship, they likely could. However, there is some language in the grant policy, I guess, inhibiting the attempt to provide multiple grants unless they're for multiple events or issues. The other issue, though, one would face is that the grants will now be considered, I think, in April, so they would have to likely get funding from council contingency at this point for the balance of the year.
Okay, and so could they just request a larger grant to encompass both the Remembrance Day banners and the regular banners and the snowflakes?
Effectively correct. I would suggest two communications. Of course, one's already been processed. The other one would be this matter, and it might be something they could either do at this point or simply wait till the next year and cover it till then.
Councillor Richter?
I'd like to make an amendment.
Okay.
Okay, my amendment would be that council
This
provide...
is a second clause you're adding?
No, it's, second paragraph to the...
Okay, yep.
The council authorize payment from council contingency to outsource the installation of these snowflakes in time for Christmas 2023.
An installation within Fort Langley. Maybe you could read that?
Installation within Fort Langley.
Could you read that again just for me? Just one more time, please.
That council authorize payment from council contingency to outsource the installation of these snowflakes in Fort Langley for Christmas 2023.
Is there a seconder to that? Seconded by Councillor Pratt. Go ahead, Councillor Victor. Do you have any more?
I think we could look at other options for 2024, but right now, the pressing need is 2023. So this will deal with 2023, and council can make a decision, or staff can make a recommendation at a subsequent time for us to pass them on to another association, perhaps in Fort Langley, and offer them a bigger grant to do it. There are other options to look at, but not putting them up in Fort Langley this year, I think, is not a viable option.
Councillor Ferguson?
I won't be supporting this mainly because it's a little bit late in the game, and there's not really a number put to this outsource. It could be $100,000. I mean, the reality is that it's getting late, but that doesn't mean to say some service group or other organization out there that could be contacted. And I know the Lions are always busy, but they may have a group of people. It's only 15 snowflakes, and they put them up in the past, and that's what I had said to the delegation when I had met. I mean, surely to goodness, 15. It ended up being a big mumbo jumbo going on here, where I think it could be solved a lot quicker. I do sympathize with Councillor Bailey's position about safety, but I think 15 shouldn't be that big a hindrance. But I just can't support the motion. Thank you, Mr. Mayor.
Okay, thank you. Seeing no other discussion, I'll call the question on that amendment. That's defeated. Councillor Bailey, Councillor Rent, Mayor Woodward, Councillor Van Popta, Councillor Pratt, Councillor Ferguson opposed. Now back to the main motion as amended. Is there any other discussion? Councillor Richter, please, this will be your third time, but go ahead.
On the main motion?
That's correct, but go ahead, it's fine. I can't remember whether you spoke or you're just moving amendments, so go ahead.
Well, okay. I thought I was speaking on amendments prior to, but I think this is really an unfortunate decision on the part of Langley Township Council, that we're taking the offer of snowflakes. We're not guaranteeing they will go up this year, and we're not even guaranteeing that they will appear in Fort Langley. So thank you very much for carving the guts out of my notice of motion to the point where I can't even support my own notice of motion. Well done, gentlemen.
I think there's some lady here too, but that's fine. Yeah, it's an interesting one. Being a part of the BIA for 5 years, we discussed Christmas decorations in downtown for a long time, and always determined it to be outside the reach of the BIA. And yeah, even that debate, I think, was contributed. Even proceeding with this contributed to the BIA no longer being around. The interesting thing is, if it's not in their mandate, I'm not sure why they took it on to begin with. And if the township is going to be getting into the business of decorating downtowns, I believe it's got to be done the same for all communities, with proper funding and a process to do that. Here we are again with another Christmas political motion. I'll call the question on P1 as amended. And that's defeated. Councillor Richter, Councillor Rint, Mayor Woodward, Councillor Van Popta opposed. Move on to P2. Aldergrove Community Center expansion. I'll move that. Is there a seconder? Seconded by Councillor Rint. Is there any discussion on P2? Seeing none, I'll call the question. Oh, I got to be faster. Councillor Richter, go ahead.
Yeah, I just wanted to know what the cost of this will likely be.
Mr. Back, and I believe that would reveal itself through the second phase of this, because I would point out to you this refers it to the budget process to determine funding for design and costing, which would yield that answer to that question, if that makes sense, how the motion is structured. So we would not have that information unless council decides to fund a design and consultation process. Does that make sense?
No. That's why I'm asking.
I'm kind of highlighting how it would be challenging to get an answer based on how the
Well,
motion is
it
structured.
says, resolve the council refers to the 2024 budget process for potential funding. Well,
If you look, Mr.
what
Backett-
number are we referring to the budget process?
So, Mr. Baggin, if you look at the motion to initiate conceptual designs and necessary pre-job, that's all that the funding request would be for, which would be to fund design and some initial investigation work and consultation to determine what the project may or may not actually be. So I think are we questioning what the overall project may cost, or are we questioning what the design of a potential project may cost? If that makes sense, Councilor Victor?
Well, I'd still like to have a potential number that we're referring to the budget process.
Mr. Bracken?
Your worship, I'll give it a try. I don't see this as actually referring a cost, but really the topic to the budget process. And at the budget process, then council may further determine they wish to initiate conceptual designs and necessary pre-works. At that time, if council so directed, we would have that costing available. But at this point, I don't see it as actually a request for a costing, that being the motion. I instead see it as a request that the topic be referred to the budget process.
And potentially a budget envelope to begin that design process, similar to what we've done for other capital projects.
Correct.
So when it does get to the budget process, we will have a number then to consider?
We would have to have some financial information, and I think that would probably come from the facilities group or the project group to determine, after they heard some further input, as to what we're seeking to do.
Okay, thank you.
Thank you. Councilor Ferguson?
We are at the Alder Grove Community Center expansion, correct, Mr. Mayor?
That's correct.
And I am excited about this, being a member of the task force a number of years ago, and the building being built. And a lot of us at the task force says, what's next? This is what's next. It's very, very positive and a great opportunity again for Alder Grove. I'm looking forward to the concepts and potential expansion options. I'm looking forward to that. Thank you very much for bringing this. I'm sure that the community will be excited about this. And one simple thing I wanted to put out, this particular land, was it not something that came up last term that we rejected an offer, which we don't usually do?
I believe we rejected
Yes,
the installation of a permanent parking lot.
that's correct.
To allow this project to proceed.
I wanted to bring that up because I was excited to see something recreation instead of a parking lot.
It was great to see the previous council allow this option to be considered by this one.
It was great.
Yep.
Thank you very much.
Thank you. I want to highlight in the motion in the second paragraph, this is intended to get well ahead of the curve, and potentially this would proceed near the end of this term if it's something council wishes to fund. Mr. Bracken, remind us when those commercial tenancies are expected to release the site and unencumber the site for council to consider something.
I believe there's only one left, and Mr. Winsley can correct me, but I think it's probably in the next year or so.
I believe it's 2025 sometime, Mr. Winsley?
I believe that's correct, Your Worship.
Yeah, so this is just getting ahead of it with the process, so when that tenancy's done, council would have the option to proceed, not starting to proceed and losing those couple of years with the site potentially vacant. So that's the goal here, is to just get this in the system. That call the question on P2. That carries unanimously. Item P3, I'll move that. Is there a second, or seconded by Councillor Rent? Any discussion on P3? Seeing none, I'll call the question on P3. That carries unanimously. Item P4, I'll move that. Is there a second, or seconded by Councillor Rent? Councillor Pratt, go ahead.
Thank you, Your Worship. In regards to the second part of the therefore be it resolved clause, that it be excluded from transit property taxes, is there, I guess this will come out through the discussion and through the reporting on this, but is there any mechanism that the taxes that would be sent to TransLink could be remitted instead to a municipal authority of some kind to run?
We can double check. Mr. Bracken, we don't believe we have that authority. That would be something the Merit Mayor, I think, was toying with that got resolved, but I think as of right now, the Township of Langley would not have authority to do that. Is that correct?
That is correct. We would need the consent of TransLink.
Okay, thank you.
So I think the idea here would be that this would be additional advocacy to have them make up their minds after millions and millions and millions of dollars paid by Gloucester for lack of service, either provide the service or let them go. Councillor Richter?
Yeah, I had a question about including the Township of Langley in this under the therefore, because what exactly does this mean? What does that mean our potential costs would be?
Mr. Beck, and I believe the potential model would be that the TransLink taxes remitted on property tax could then be retained by the Township of Langley to contract service with BC Transit. Is that correct?
That would be our understanding, Your Worship.
That would be mine as well.
And why doesn't it say that clearly? Because you can interpret this in paragraph as saying township's now getting into the business of bus service.
That's not how I interpret it, but okay.
Well, it's, the details are always in the wording. With service to be provided by BC Transit and the Township of Langley.
You know, the Township of Langley would be the funding mechanism, but transit
So
service provided by BC
then
Transit.
that sentence should be revised to say, with service provided by BC Transit and funded by the Township of Langley through property tax remittances. Isn't that what you're trying to do?
I believe that that was the only way it would occur, very similar to how, say, Abbotsford provides service.
Okay, I'd like to move division on this one.
What are you dividing, 1 and 2?
1 and 2.
Is there a seconder to division? Not seeing a seconder to division.
Okay.
Do you wish to move an amendment?
Yeah, I'd like to delete 2.
Is there a seconder to that amendment to remove item 2? Seeing no seconder, Councillor Richter.
Okay.
I call the question on G4. Sorry, P4. P4, yeah. That carries. Councillor Richter opposed. P5, move that. Is there a seconder? Seconded by Councillor Rent. Any discussion on P5? Seeing none, call the question on P5. That carries unanimously. P6, I'll move that. Is there a seconder? Seconded by Councillor Rent. Is there any discussion on P5? Councillor Ferguson. Sorry, P6.
Six right now.
P6, yeah, go ahead.
It's been moved and seconded, thank
It
you,
has.
Chair. I just wanted to point out that this is a fact finding initiative, and I think it's important that as we, as a community, grow, and it's a need for school sites, you know, are there in the Township of Langley, that it's very, very important for us to look at what we have, how we provide it, and the history behind it, and how other communities do it as well. So I think it's very, very important to note what we do, provide the park site to schools, and how we work together. We work the development community with part of the rezoning process to acquire the land, and we buy it and proceed accordingly. I think it's important to know what's fair and what's not, and how we can continue this initiative. Thank you.
Yeah, thank you. Councillor Richter.
Okay, when I read this motion, the first thought that went through my head was, what's the real intent here? Is the intent here for us to get out of the business of putting playing fields beside schools? Because that's sure where the whereases are heading. The actual motion itself, where it's just looking for a report from staff, I can and I will support that, but I feel I need to ask staff, can this report, with the 3 big pieces of it, be comfortably delivered by staff by December 4th?
Mr. Baga?
It's a month.
The task is significant. However, we do have access to some of the staff who are retired that can help us with some of these matters because of their knowledge and skills. So we would certainly target for that, and if there was a need for an extension, we'd advise council, but I think we can take a good run at this.
Okay. And can I also, because how staff interpret motions is very important to the type of report that is done. I, for one, do not believe that our past practice of putting playing fields beside schools is a bad past practice to abandon. So I would like to be assured that if I vote in favor of this, that staff will bring a balanced report to council and not a report that is being pushed towards the direction of, well, Surrey doesn't do it this way, why do we? Because Surrey is Surrey and we're township.
Your worship, I don't see this motion as actually looking for, I guess, opinion or policy advice, at least not at this point. I look at it as being primarily geared towards some of the facts, historical facts that are available to us, and if there are no historical facts, then to try to make some logical connections between the facts we have available to us and the questions that are asked here. So we don't look at it, I believe, as being something that's self-evident. We look at this as simply being information-driven.
Yeah, Mr. Bracken, we ever done a summary like this, going back to the period where it would itemize what a great partner the Township of Langley has been for the Ministry of Education? Has there ever been a summary like this put in place that shows, I think, holistically, the level to which the Township of Langley has been very supportive?
The short answer is no, your worship,
Yeah.
not with the ministry. In some other contexts, we've done partial work, but not in education and playing fields.
So, for example, if the school district had an assumption that perhaps the Township of Langley should be doing more, this might be helpful to show them how much we're already doing. Would that be fair?
It'd be a very good starting point,
Yeah.
yes.
Okay, well, I just want to put the flag up the pole right now and right here that if this work that staff is going to be asked to do in a very short period of time is going to be used to divorce ourselves from the school district by not providing support to the schools in terms of playing fields, I'm going to be very strongly opposed to that because I don't believe it's a bad pattern of practice that we've had. That's all I'm saying.
Yeah. So I'm going to go to Councillor Ferguson. I'll have some more comments. Councillor Ferguson, go ahead.
Yeah, thank you. I know that Councillor Richter and myself have been on council, and we have certainly supported a program like this for many years, and I myself don't have any reason to want to change what we're already doing. I actually believe that we have been credited, and I don't expect staff to be able to answer this right now, and nor would it be fair to ask that question, by being able to build schools in the past. Now, it's slowing down because we're not getting schools built right now, and that's a challenge. So that's something that has to be addressed. That's regardless. And I think we have land and park space sitting ready to go. But that would be something that's separate and distinct. My understanding is we continue with this process, learn more about what we do and what others do, and work out. And it could be something as simple as a funding model. I don't know. But the interesting thing is to note that moving forward with schools is important. It's always been important to this community. I believe that, and Councillor Richter might know as well, things like Walnut Grove Secondary School went up with a community center beside it. The Willoughby schools, the secondary schools, have gone up with a recreational center, the LAC, with ice and with basketball courts and gym space and fields and beside it. And that was an opportunity that the province saw as a value, and so did the school district. And there's a number of different things. Langley Secondary School with a track beside it and a number of fields. The list goes on and on and on. And I think if you look at the world-class things that we have in the township of Langley, most of them are either adjacent to a school or very close. And I think we as a community have done a stellar job in providing that, and we want to continue to do that. But that doesn't mean to say that we can't look at a change or a formula or just information. It doesn't hurt to ask for more information. So certainly I think it's a great step in the right direction. Schools are important. Thank you.
Yeah, thank you. Yeah, I appreciate I did certainly review the December 4th timeline before advancing it. So I certainly appreciate Mr. Bracken and Mr. Cooner's department and any other resources that are available to complete this. I think there's definitely some information that needs to be compiled to present to council what I believe is financially on the horizon. If, say, for example, the densities in Fernridge, which I have a motion coming up regarding that, are going to be arbitrarily potentially doubled by the province's Homes for People plan, Where's the money going to come from for $50 million per school going to come from? So I think it's important to start asking these questions, that if the province is going to run cities, let them come and run cities. Because the challenges that we're going to be dealing with, if the community planning process is going to be stripped from us, I think there's a number of implications coming, and this is one of them. Councillor Bailey?
Yeah, as someone who doesn't have the history, I would value a review of what the township has contributed, but I also, I really want to find out if there are some new innovative ways of looking at it, and I don't want to handcuff staff at all on what kind of report they're going to. If there are other jurisdictions doing some creative stuff or innovative stuff or the same stuff regarding schools and the municipal jurisdiction, I definitely would love to see that.
Yeah, appreciate that. And one other thing that will come from this is if single-family subdivisions now have to be terminated, and all of the work that gone into planning for those in Willoughby and all of our greenfield areas, all of these subdivisions now have to essentially be terminated. And we have to, in order to keep the density equal, you would be compacting the same amount of density on a smaller footprint, townhouse development, for example. The remainder of that land may have to become park, and it has to be funded from somewhere. And if it has to be funded from this, and the schools, Ministry of Education can fund schools, and we'll have to fund parks because we're no longer allowed to build single-family subdivisions. These are the kinds of questions that I feel it's my responsibility to bring to council to make the decision, and to get this information together, and the liability that is accumulating if the province is going to do this to us, I think is very important to advance. So with that, I'm going to call the question on P6. That carries unanimously. So under other business, Ms. Little, if you could bring up that motion I distributed. It's slightly changed, but we'll put it up on the screen. It's substantially similar to what I emailed yesterday. The time is of the essence on this. I'm going to get the motion moved and seconded first. You can raise that once it's moved and seconded. I'll move it. Is there a seconder? Seconded by Councillor Rich. Councillor Richter, you have a point of order?
Yeah. This never came as a notice of motion. It arrived in our mailboxes at 9:15 p.m. last night. I have not had the time to review this. I don't understand why this is even on as a seconded motion right now and not as a notice of motion for the next meeting.
I believe I'm trying to get this information.
Well, I'd like to
If I could answer your question, Councillor Richter. If you don't want the answer, that's fine. Go ahead.
I would like to ask if this is permissible under the procedure bylaw.
I believe it's at the discretion of the chair. If there's time is of the essence, Ms. Little, could you please confirm that?
I'm just looking it up, but that is the wording that if it is an emergent matter.
I believe the legislation is due to be passed any moment, essentially. So I'm trying to get this information together to try to lobby some last-minute changes. While it may still be possible,
Well,
Councillor
you
Richter,
know,
if you don't support that, then just vote against it.
I happen to think this is an important topic. I think it's an urgent topic, not an emergent topic.
You had a point of order. Do you wish to speak to the motion? Could you please clarify
Yeah, my
your
point of order is, why is this not here as a notice of motion for us to have time to
I've
contemplate
already
it
explained
prior
that,
to the next meeting?
and I've ruled that it's in order. If you wish to challenge the chair, that would be your option.
Yeah, okay, I'm going to challenge the chair.
Okay. Ms. Little, could you please guide us through that process, please?
Certainly. For challenge of the chair, the mayor not vote. There is no discussion. Vote happens immediately. To be in favor of the mayor, you vote yes. To sustain the mayor.
Great. So I'll call the question. Go ahead. Can you finish up that vote? It doesn't allow me to place vote complete. I have to label it, so we'll label that P6. So I believe that means the chair's ruling was sustained. Is that correct, Ms. Little?
That is correct.
That's correct. So we'll carry on. I'd like to review the motion here briefly. So the council hereby requests a presentation from staff on November 20th regarding the proposed Housing Statutes Residential Development Amendment Act of 2023 to include item 1, the potential need to review and redo engineering servicing plans within developing areas with ongoing new residential urban development areas. Number 2, potential implications for existing single-family neighborhoods regarding needed additional school sites, road dedications, recreation capacity, and/or green spaces for the possible additional population density without any land use planning, public consultation, or rezoning processes to secure them. Item 3, potential implications for the urban planning process to renew or otherwise update completed neighborhood or community plans over the long term. While developing areas of Willoughby, Booth, Rynn, Fernridge are ongoing for many years to come and set to provide a significant quantity of the additional missing middle housing forms the legislation is intended to create. Item number 4, potential implications that bus rapid transit on 200 Street or 202nd Street north of Highway 1 could now have on the established single-family neighborhoods of the western areas of Walnut Grove, with 6 units mandated to be permitted per single-family lot without adequate minimum parking requirements. Item number 5, the potential implications for projected population densities of Booth, Rynn, and Fernridge neighborhood plans now being substantially higher than adopted by Council. The potential process for Council to consider the suspension or repeal of the Booth, Rynn, and Fernridge neighborhood plans and the implications thereof. A potential process for Council to reconsider any and all designated new single-family subdivision development applications within the Township of Langley in-stream or otherwise, other content or recommendations that may be appropriate for Council to consider. So this is here because I've never seen legislation of this magnitude being rammed through so quickly with no consultation with elected officials that I'm aware of throughout the region. Every mayor that I've spoken to has highlighted that they have not been consulted whatsoever. The implications are significant, and I believe that this is all potential. It's in every clause for staff to come forward and have a chance to interact and ask some questions, potentially for some advocacy before it's too late. What is being done here to the Township of Langley while we have about 2,000 acres of urban land to deliver the very missing middle housing that this government, and I agree with, are trying to create throughout the region, to do this to Walnut Grove and Murrayville in the way that this is being done is not acceptable. And it's going to have significant ramifications in my opinion, but let's get that information from staff. That's just my opinion. Let's get the information from staff, give all members of council a chance to weigh in on what advocacy to make by the end of the month, and have that be a council decision and council direction on what the ramifications may or may not be for the Township of Langley if this is to proceed. In my opinion, they're significant. The population projections for Booth, Rynn, and Fernridge at 47,000, which this township spent 10 years making, has now been almost doubled. Because if we have a significant quantity of 4,000, 5,000, 8,000, 10,000 square foot lots in our southern areas, while we're putting in a lot of the higher density forms into Willoughby, they have now arbitrarily placed 4 units on every 5,000 square foot lot, potentially adding up to 50 to 60,000 people with no planning for schools, no planning for parks, no planning for roads, no planning for transit whatsoever. It's significant, and I believe it's got to be council's attention in a timely fashion, not after the legislation is passed. Councilor Van Popte, go ahead.
Yeah, I just wanted to clarify that the province made their announcement on Wednesday, which would have been after the closing of notices of motion anyways.
That's correct.
And I just want to commend the mayor on this extensive motion. When I heard it on Wednesday, there was a bit of panic. Having all of those concerns. There's been lots of news on this. There's been lots of interviews on this throughout the region, not just Langley focused. And this is a massive announcement that is going to impact every single area of Langley, how we function, how we move, how we go to school, how we get to work, and time is of the essence, and so I'm very thankful for the complexity of this motion and the urgency to get it through and to get this work done before any legislation is passed. Thank you.
We can, yeah. And so to highlight the difference here, the legislation seems to be targeted at areas that are completed, such as the west side of Vancouver or the North Shore. It doesn't seem to contemplate at all that there are some of us in the region creating brand new single-family subdivisions of significant size, while the vast majority of the urban land is being developed into townhouse and missing middle row home, secondary suites, apartments. We are one of two, other than Surrey, creating new single-family subdivisions, which will no longer be able to create. And the ramifications on that are significant. Councillor Richter.
I think there are some key points that have not been included in this and that should be in the staff presentation. To me, the areas that are most threatened right now are the areas like Salmon River Uplands, where the zoning is SR. And I want to know as well, what happens in areas like the Salmon River Uplands, where there is no servicing? It's usually septic and private wells. Can they still put 4 or 6 units in?
So the legislation currently contemplates this would only apply within the urban containment boundary, and the Salmon River Uplands are outside the urban containment boundary. And for those areas inside the urban containment boundary, without sewer service or water service would be excluded.
The other issue that I want to address, or that I'd like to have addressed as well, is the whole topic of canopy loss. We've just spent a lot of money in a previous term getting a very comprehensive tree management plan and canopy study done. How many trees are at risk in the township now?
I think
I don't think there's going to be one property, particularly in the Brookswood area, that has trees now that will be left with a single tree standing.
So the challenge there, Mr. Backen, is the legislation specifically outlines that any attempt to subvert the legislation, such as with tree protection bylaws, would not be permitted. So, Councillor Richter, you are correct to identify that we would potentially lose control of tree protection.
The other issue is the whole setbacks and streamside protection. We've got 700 kilometers of streams in our township. How many of those 700 kilometers are now at risk because of setbacks being reduced?
Setbacks have not been reduced.
So this to me is a township-wide issue. It will have massive repercussions. The areas where it's going to have the most massive repercussions right now, I think, are the areas where we have current SR zoning that's being converted into, well, we've been doing it in Willoughby to 5,000 square foot lots. We've talked about 4,000 square foot lots in Brookswood. What's going to be left of the the environmental culture of this community as a result of this provincial initiative? And I know our hands are tied. We're creatures of the province. They can do whatever they want.
They can certainly require this within Walnut Grove and Murrayville, and from what I've seen, it'll be very difficult to stop. But from what I understand, the legislation is not going to require us to create new single-family subdivisions for them to ruin. So I believe that, Mr. Backen, we would have to substantially review Booth, Rinn, and Fernridge to deliver the same projected density that this council adopted just a few months ago. Does that make sense?
With the legislation that does,
yes. Yes, it does. And so I think the challenge being that they don't seem to be, because they're not consulting with anyone that I'm aware of, they're certainly not consulting with me, this council. So the challenge will be, again, in these developing areas, we may have to look at redoing some of these neighborhood plans, which will delay development of these neighborhood plans far beyond the scope of any missing middle housing this plan is going to create in the next 2 to 3 years. So again, I'm not sure who's making these decisions, but they're not very well informed. No. Councillor Ferguson, go ahead.
Well, I think it's good to note that this is monumental report and required. And simple as that. We need to get the information to be able to move forward accordingly and plan for the future, or future the plan. It was mentioned Salmon River Uplands and some of the rural areas. Well, we do have some pipes running through that, but that doesn't change the fact that creative people can start putting the services in. That means services for sewerage, for water, for drainage, and other things that come with developing of communities. So unfortunately, those that are protected right now by septic system and wells, that could change significantly. So it's important as our community is addressed and we address the needs, we don't know what the managed growth for the future is going to be based on the program by the province. We need to find out information, and we also need to find out if they plan to meet with us or meet with regions and discuss what their role would be in the future and how livability and I guess even environmental things would be addressed accordingly. Thank you.
Thank you. Councillor Pratt?
Yeah, thank you, Your Worship. And I think this legislation being brought down onto us by the province is an example of best of intentions, but in my opinion, needs some work on execution. Municipalities in general, let's call a spade, they're the reason why we've got ourselves into a housing crisis. Not enough housing has been permitted, not enough housing has been built. But the reality is that these targets, the neighborhoods that should be targeted by this type of change, are the ones that have remained stagnant for decades, where rapid transit has gone in and the municipalities haven't actually built housing around it. While we still have so many acres of undeveloped land that we are actually putting thousands of homes on, I think for the broad stroke of this legislation to also target the municipalities that are actually putting the work to do and build the housing, I think is unfair. So I'm looking forward to the presentation from staff, because I think there needs to be a way that we can work together on this one with the province, as opposed to be adversaries on trying to actually deliver housing for people to live in.
Yeah, I think it's well spoken. I wish we were not in this position, trying to advocate for legislation already on the floor. I wish there had been at least some consultation. We could have provided this feedback. If they make a hard decision going in a different direction, then that's what they do. But they proposed this without even speaking to us. Mr. Backen, I did have a question about the requirement to complete, this is not specifically in here, but if we go back to the top of the motion, regarding the proposed Housing Statutes Amendment Act. So I think the idea there would be council would be walk through the basic proposal from the province, one of which would be the requirement to amend all single-family zones within the urban containment boundary by June. I don't know, whether that's feasible, practical. And then I would like to ask, if this government is no longer in government, how do you undo that if we're legally required to do it by June? So my understanding would be that if we grant zoning by right for 4 units per lot, then to retract that or change that zoning, that would be considered a down zoning requiring compensation potentially. So is that something you could potentially have included in the presentation?
We would try to touch upon that, Your Worship. As you said, it's incredibly complicated because of the various scenarios, but we could try to at least talk about the process by which would be the properties rezoned, and if there's to be a subsequent change, what that process would look like.
Yeah, thank you. Councillor Richter?
I'd also like to have healthcare included in the discussion. It's not just schools, it's also hospitals. Ours is already stressed, and what they're proposing is going to quadruple the stress on an already stressed system.
Mr. Bracken, we can certainly touch on that. Yeah. Councillor Van Popta?
Can anybody answer for me, Your Worship, or through staff, what happens if we don't comply with the province?
Remedies would be an interesting discussion. I believe there's an extension process, but remedies remedies can certainly be outlined. I believe that is covered in the legislation.
It is?
I believe, yeah. There are remedies available to them, yeah.
Okay. I wouldn't mind hearing what those remedies are.
I believe that can be covered as well. The work plan from CPP, I would also like to see that reviewed and covered, and potentially the timelines being required due to the election cycle, how we're going to proceed with the work plan we already laid out for industrial land creation on Fraser Highway, potentially involves truck parking, all the way to completing updates for Smith Neighborhood Plan and Williams Neighborhood Plan to produce more housing that they're requesting. Those plans will now have to be delayed even further, potentially. I'd like to understand that. How many thousands of units will be delayed to create a handful of units? That, I'll call the question on the motion, which is
You may label it P7.
P7. That carries unanimously. Is there any other business? In a motion to resolve, is there any item, motion to resolve in a special close? Anybody wish to have any items to add? Councillor Richter?
Yeah, I'd like to remove item F1 and put it in the public forum.
Okay, why don't we do this differently? We'll move it as amended, and then you could make that amendment. So I have 2 items to add. I would like to add an intergovernmental item and a legal item, please. Get a motion to resolve in a special close. Moved by Councillor Ferguson, seconded by Councillor Pratt. Councillor Richter, you wish to make that amendment? You wish to move that amendment again, please? We have the motion on the floor
Yeah,
to resolve in special
item
close.
F1 should be out in the open and being discussed here, not in special close.
Is there a seconder to that? Not seeing a seconder to that, Councillor Richter. So get all those, call the question on cue. And that carries. Councillor Richter opposed. Get a motion to terminate. Moved by Councillor Pratt, seconded by Councillor Bailey. All those in favor, opposed, and that's carried. Thank you.
Oh, come on. Give us at least 10 minutes.
.3:43 is the actual time.